TV Corner.
Hey guys, welcome to the last Filmcore TV Corner Game of Thrones podcast. This is season 8, episode 6, The Iron Throne. With me, I have Greg.
Hey, how are you?
And there's been a lot of mixed feelings about this finale, but I think it's important maybe since I feel like the carcass has been sort of picked over, that we just sort of focus maybe on the positives.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because as I was kind of going over everything today, for one thing, I was really surprised by how much I was thinking about it, given how bad the last couple seasons have been, really. And I mean, just really especially I'm not really a spectacle kind of person, so when I see that a show is now more interested in flexing its muscles, I just kind of I turn off, and so the sadness, and I mean, I think the reason people get upset about something they love, like a show like this, is because you know what it can be, right? So it's like the failed potential, and what's so frustrating about it is that you have all these things that kind of make sense, like with just like I like what they were trying to say, you know what I mean? I like what they were trying to go with it, but an unearned ending place in the TV show, unfortunately, like it does matter how you get there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it shows like how you can have sort of all of the plot points you have to hit, but if you don't create a story that's compelling and delivered in a way that's interesting, then it doesn't matter, and everything just feels flat and forced.
Yeah,
and it's something that Game of Thrones managed to avoid for so long. You know, it was super dynamic. Everything was so well written. It really took its time, and that was great.
Yeah, but like as I was saying, I mean, I was struck by how I kept thinking about it, like really thinking about the characters deserving better, and thinking about those scenes, and like how in a vacuum, I really kind of love a lot of the scenes. From the get-go, just the walking through the ashes, I thought was extremely powerful. It was sort of like, it reminded me of what the show used to be a lot.
Yeah.
You know, looking at real effects of something is sort of what made the show cool, right? Is that it took fantasy and it normalized it, or grounded it. And this was the first time in a while where we saw that.
I mean, it's like, to your point earlier about like spectacle, like you can see a giant dragon going through the sky, but just seeing someone like sort of just dazed and completely like burned and sort of hopeless, it's way more impactful.
Yeah, I mean, because look, we've at this point, it's kind of like there's nothing that I'll see on like that's computer generated that is gonna astound me, right?
Yeah.
Because I've seen the world blow up like 100 times now. You know, like through different movies or shows, or, you know, it's just like what we keep coming back to, I think, and kind of I guess why, you know, what compelled us to do this show in the first place and to really think about it was we really cared about the characters, and like time and time again, the shows that people stick with and that they wanna following, and the characters that they feel like are alive outside of them and that they could feel betrayed by when it sucks, like Lucas and Star Wars and stuff, is a real sign to me. It's like a really like positive, hopeful sign that people want connection with each other. Yeah, I mean, like there's been a lot of talk about like already like the camps have sort of formed where you have people who are like, well, there's a waste of 8 years, and I'm definitely in the other camp that's like, yeah, this wasn't like, yeah, they bombed the ending. I think in time I will sort of just remember the best parts of it, these scenes in vacuums, and I'll be okay with that, right? Because I was never the kind of person that like just wanted to see who gets to be on the Iron Throne. You know what I mean? Like that was always such a ridiculous way to enjoy the show for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it comes back to, I forget what season it was, but that speech that Littlefinger gives to Varys about who gets to sit in the throne, and that it's all about the climb, right? And
I mean, yeah, in a lot of ways it is just about the journey.
It's just the journey, for sure.
Honestly, at this point, I mean, putting my feelings about this season aside, it didn't matter to me who really sat on the throne ultimately. It just mattered to me that everyone got sort of a fitting end.
Right.
A lot of characters did get a good ending, you know? I can't really say the same about Jon what the? I mean, I wanted him to go north, maybe, but now not on these terms. But
That's it,
here we
right? So
are.
that's where the sort of the prevailing feeling right now is that it's the right ending, but it doesn't make sense how he got there. That it should have been something that he people, and I agree with this too. I mean, it's sort of, it seemed like the logical thing is that he gets offered the throne for killing Daenerys, and that just was I mean, that's such a no brainer that the fact that they didn't do it is really curious more than anything.
Well, they love to, as they say, subvert expectations slash logic. But I mean, that's the thing too. Like, that's a great point because even in Dany dying, if she had died another way, like say if she had somehow sacrificed herself with people of King's Landing because of like wildfire or something, if there had been some other reason for her death that was sort of more about her realizing that she needs to sacrifice herself to, ultimately break the wheel as she was so determined to do. That would have been much more fitting than the sort of like weird, crazy twist of character that they just seem to really force upon us. I mean, Sansa being Queen of the North, sure, whatever. I guess she deserves it. Did we like the way she got there by sort of sucking this entire season? Not really. Did we like that Tyrion stayed Hand of the King? Yeah, that makes sense. Do we like how he was brought out in chains, gave a speech, decided who was king, and then became Hand of the King? No. So there's like a bunch of things that like ultimately am I that upset the way like things landed? Not really. I'm just more upset about the convoluted fucking walk we took to get there, which this episode was all about walks, if you guys noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even mind that as much, really. It's like at this point, it's such a man. How about the fact that the dragon, like, why doesn't it just, I think the older show would have had the dragon just burn down the whole room, and then the throne melts, de facto.
And John walks out like
Well,
unburned.
he walks out because he like knows he can walk out, right? But the fact that the dragon like only burns down the chair. I mean, it's just such a. There's just so many curious decisions that kind of defeat the purpose of the scenes. But I was just thinking about this idea of like subversion. What's cool, I think, about the show, or like what has always been a testament to Benioff and Weiss, or maybe like Martin, right? Maybe this actually goes back to Martin, is that the surprises always made sense.
Yeah.
They were the sort of like I may have mentioned this before, but I had this like high school English teacher who he had this one great thing about that I took with me regarding endings, and he said an ending should be surprising yet inevitable, right? So that when it happens, you're surprised, but not because the writers played a trick on you or like led you down a path that they were actually never going to follow.
Mm-hmm.
The writing is so that the story is so strong that they can show you their hand, and still you convince yourself that it can't happen that way because you don't want it to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like the Red Wedding. I mean, it was so obvious that Robb Stark didn't keep his promise to Walder Frey, who is fickle to begin with. And it was so clear that everyone was plotting against the Starks. Like, that was a heartbreaking scene, but also, like, we were shocked, but everything made sense. Like, you could logically see the whole path of, like, well, what Robb should have done differently, not, like, what the show should have done differently,
Right.
And that's a huge difference. Like, being able to say, like, a character's motives are so clear and so true to who they are as a character that it's not about the writing. The writing just seems to be representative of what the character would actually do. And that's why I think a lot of frustrations were this season.
Definitely the special effects went kind of down on this one, very flat. You could kind of see that the matte paintings were all there. They really look green screen. Now these shots of these water bottles have come out too. There's
we know it has gone up. Costumes, they're killing it.
Costumes. Yeah, I mean it's like for every, I think like it was such a fully realized show before, that now it's really a matter of really strong things and really negative things, and it sort of like averages out to a good time. But that's such a different experience than the show that it used to be.
Yeah, it's become some sort of like weird action blockbuster
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways, and I feel like the problem is that this show also, I mean, with a lot of things, like when your favorite band sort of gets famous, when you get a lot of money, you start losing sight of what you were really about, and things fall through the
Yeah, I mean,
cracks.
people our age would call that selling out. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. They definitely sold out.
And yeah, and maybe they did, right? I mean, it's in a couple of years, sort of as like the Game of Thrones industry takes off, whether anything makes a playback, or whether things start and any of the sequels, or they start um, referencing this. I mean, there's a couple like to me, there's like a couple things that were unforgivable in this episode, like Sam writing the book.
Oh my God. Yes. Oh wow. I really managed to block that out of my memory. That's
Yeah, I
crazy.
did
That was
too.
so
I do
dumb.
too. It's like I do too when I think about the things that I really like about, you know what I mean? But that kind of makes it unrewatchable for me also. It's like I kind of just have to, like, I could rewatch the first 5 seasons probably and be so into it, and like, look at the like watch the scenes of Sir Davos with the sex pirate, or like all these random things like the Arya meeting the what's his name, the guy from the house,
Jack and Hagar.
Jack and Hagar. Yeah, like that's such a great period of the show for me.
One of my favorite scenes is actually when Marjorie walks in her brother and his boyfriend. And it's like the greatest scene because she just Natalie Dormer just like goes through all these emotions of like being sort of like annoyed, sort of aroused, sort of like playful. It's like such a great scene, like so simple, and it took nothing but her just entering this room. And that's the kind of things I miss about this show.
Totally, totally. And when the stakes got so high, they kind of let go of certain things, but I don't think they needed to. That's the weird part. It's just like there's so much strange decision making here, and obviously, we don't need to get into every plot hole or like every setup that just gets abandoned,
Mm-hmm.
because there's too many to count, really, right? It's like
I mean, really, all of them got abandoned.
all of them, right? Actually, all of them,
I'm trying to think of one that just that went through, and actually, like none.
and that cheapens it. And I just think like in my head, I'm already building the better version of how we get there, right? So, for example, I'm thinking, okay, well, the John killing Daenerys the way he does, and the talk. I love the speech that Tyrion gives him beforehand, because I think it's like it's a very wise look at how evil is committed, right? Like always in the name of righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
really like that whole scene, and I like the way he was playing John, like revealing to John, forcing John to really to deal with it. But that would have been so much stronger if we had 2 or 3 episodes of John being by Daenerys' side as she got progressively crazier, but was like, yeah, but we're in this together, right?
Yeah.
So that he's a little bit more complicit, right? The fact that he just like it's just the speed. I mean, there's really not too much to say about it. The whole thing is just rushed.
I think, yeah, to that point, I mean, his turn away from her, just finding out that she was his aunt, was just so unrealistic and so forced, and it would have been much more natural for him to be sort of
Obsessed with her.
reluctant, but still sort of like,
Oh, I mean, but it would have made so much more sense if he was like, yeah, we're ruling together. I'm your number two. I don't love what you're doing right now, but like, okay, I'll try and see the bigger picture that you're painting, right?
Mhm.
And I'll do it because our sex is awesome, and like that's such a more believable place to take it than the fact that, like, yeah, because he just found out that, I mean, it's like, not to get totally off track here, but there's this thing like called genetic sexual attraction, right? And it's this real phenomena that happens with people who are um, either siblings or like parents and children who are separated at birth, and
Mhm.
then they meet as adults, and there's like a high frequency of these people who get reconnected, and they develop a sexual relationship, and it's because, like, you know people aren't habituated to think of each other as family in that way, and yet they have this deep love for them, right? And so
Like, That gets convoluted and turns to something else.
Fest as sexual attraction because as an adult, that's sort of how we're trained to show love, right? So, the inverse of that is like, well, this guy has never internalized being Aegon Targaryen, and if he has, we haven't seen it. So it does not make sense then to see him having internalized it so much that he's now put off by this relationship with her. You know,
Hmm.
it's just a sort of, I think uh, people are very confused by that being something that switches her. You know, and
Yeah,
they and
yeah.
they and they use it to switch her. I mean,
That's what also so infuriating. It's sort of like they make it all come down to if John had just liked Danny, she wouldn't be so crazy. Like, which is so cheap for her as a character. When has she ever cared about a man? Never.
yeah, and in fact, her reason for doing it, if all the pieces like in the seasons previous and like her what is it, her like premonition of what happens, if
Mm-hmm.
those had like that was enough groundwork, that was fine. I would have bought it if in these last couple episodes she started just realizing that she started tactically thinking that, you know what, fear is really the only way to get through these people, and all these townspeople are just gonna they're just gonna like be still quietly, let's say, um, they're gonna be quietly loyal to Lannister. So we're just gonna level this city. If
Mm-hmm.
she had shown some sort of strategy to this, and that it's her natural belief that what she's doing is spreading good, and it's kind of the takes breaking a couple eggs to make an omelet kind of thing, then Tyrion's speech would also make more sense to John. It's like the words he said were all correct and the scene works really well, but not when you add it up, you know, to where it has to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and when we get Danny's speech in the throne room right before John kills her, I think that was definitely a speech that was too little, too late. If we had gotten that speech like 2 episodes ago about how she really felt, like I never really got that she was willing to do this to, in some ways, cleanse the city. And if we had gotten, like you said, like any other strategy or plan or hint towards this, it would have felt less weird.
Hmm.
But here we are.
Yeah. So it's gonna be. I don't know. I'll think of it fondly.
Are you gonna watch any of the spinoffs?
I'm sure I will. I mean, I'm sure I'll give them a shot. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical just because I think with so many different spin-offs coming out, uh, I think it's starting to become kind of what Marvel is, which is just sort of like a toy factory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that like when a show is new and it just is being made for the love of being made for the story, then it's serving a different master than a show that is part of a bigger like business venture. You know?
Yeah, that is definitely my feelings of like we kind of see what happens when they have no book material to go off of. The show really suffered from that. So clearly now having literally there's one Targaryen book and like the Tales of Dunk and Egg for them to go off of. But it doesn't look like they're even going off those books anyway. So I don't know really who's guiding the helm as far as like in the writer's room. So that's the thing that really worries me. As far as like the budget's going to be there, of course, from HBO. They probably are just going to reuse a bunch of the same props. Who knows? But I'm really concerned about the storytelling. And honestly, with the way like think shows like Westworld have gone, I I don't know. This maybe has proven that HBO really can't handle big budget shows like this
Yeah.
without like tested material that HBO really doesn't know what they're doing.
I mean,
I mean, what other show of this magnitude has HBO really put out? Like of the same budget and scale, and sort of like intent, and managed to finish it off well.
yeah. I mean, if they knew what they were doing this long, and you know.
But I feel like they didn't. They didn't know what they're doing. They had the books, and then past that, now it's clear they don't. When Westworld, for example, they had the book that was written and the first Westworld movie that was made.
Oh yeah,
Look what happened with season 2, and it's now the season coming out. I have no faith in this show.
yeah. I mean, but Westworld was always trash.
I mean, you can argue that it was less trash than the first season, but I'm just saying, like, it's if anything proving further that without a book, without a literal guide, HBO and their team cannot navigate these big budget shows with complex stories. I mean, you have awesome shows like Insecure and, things like The Wire and like The Sopranos, which are, to be fair, not they're smaller in scale, not necessarily in story impact, but in something that is a little bit more manageable. And they have, I think, great writers on those shows as well. I mean, don't forget, this is a network that brought you Entourage and Ballers. So don't come at me acting like they're, putting out grade A content. No offense to Entourage and Ballers, but you know what I mean.
No, much offense to them. No, I mean I don't know. I'm not even thinking about it, like HBO as any sort of. I mean,
I'm just saying the people signing off don't care.
yeah, I mean I don't think they're really that different than any other network in that sense. But yeah, I don't know. There's a couple images in that episode that are always gonna stick with me. Like obviously when Daenerys walks out and the dragon's wings come up behind her, and that's really quite incredible. There's a lot to like in there, you know. It's just it was the first episode also where I started getting tired of a couple of characters, like Tyrion, and and it's just sort of like,
wow, they really made Tyrion monologue the whole episode.
yeah, but it was just kind of like, you know what? Let's just okay. If you're not gonna end this right, let's just end it. Let's just end it now before I start disliking all these people.
That small council meeting. I'm like, why is Bronn? I'm so tired of Bronn. I'm so tired of Sam. I'm so tired of everyone in that room except for Sir Davos at this point.
No, but it's sort of like, yeah, okay. If they're not gonna care about it, I'm not gonna. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna care about it at this point.
Yeah. I really felt bad for the actors in that scene and the scene where Bran becomes king because I can't.
Notice
delivering those lines was painful for me.
Do me a favor and watch what's the name of John Aaron's son in this? Robin. Rewatch the scene and just look at Robin, the guy who plays Robin Aaron act. It's dreadful. Just watch him through those scenes. You'll be, I mean, it's like a bad background actor, who's like hamming it up and trying to. He gets one line through it, but the rest is just him sort of responding, and it is rough. This has become a show that does not care about the real scenes of its characters,
Let's lead this off with one of our maybe our favorite Game of Thrones memory.
For me, it's always the best. No, it's Jaime in the hot tub with Brienne. Okay. Him telling his version of things is like, to me, everything about the show. That's good.
One of my favorite things that I always remember is, there's so many. Probably when Joffrey gets poisoned.
Huh.
Because that was amazing. Because you don't know, it's inevitable. But when it happens, I remember being on the edge of my seat, just being like, oh my God, they're not going to get this to us. They're not going to get this to us. And they did. And that was very satisfying. That whole wedding was awesome. Yeah. Like how much of a dick he was. Him like setting up that whole play. He was just so petty. Like it was great. Wow. Those are the days.
Okay. Well, R.I.P. Game of Thrones.
R.I.P. Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening. Catch us around on some other Filmcore podcasts. Greg, thank you so much for jumping on these with me throughout the years.
You got it.
I'm going to catch you guys next time.